Hello and welcome everyone to this demo session on SAP UI5 and Fiori training with OData services on Business Application Studio and Web ID tool. Welcome to this latest training session on UI5 of 2021 with me. It's a live training session starting today on SAP UI5. In this demo session, we will look at the core capabilities of SAP UI5. We'll kickstart our training today, and we'll also try and understand a very simple use case in the system demo. Let me brief you about this course. Who is this course for? So this course for any one of you who are part of either a technical team or working as one of these roles, as you can see on your screens. So if you're working like Kevin, a UX designer, and would like to now go beyond the UX design, wanted to develop end-to-end application by yourself, then this course is going to help you. If you're Stevia, a technical consultant working in software industry and wanted to move towards SAP, then SAP UI5 is one of the best technology to get started with. Or you're working as a solution architect like Paula. She's taking care of multiple solutions, both cloud and on-premise in her company, and she wants to expand her horizon to the new technologies. Then this training also suits to Paula. Then we have Nolan, who's an application developer, be it an ABAP or portal or BSP developer right now, working on different UI technologies. Then would like to also learn the latest and greatest tools and technologies. Then this course is going to help him. Finally, we have Sam, who is a fresher just out of college and would like to start his career in the world of SAP. Then this course is also going to help Sam. So the idea here is anyone can learn SAP UI5 and Fiori with us because this course is designed without any prerequisite. So we will cover all the tools, technologies, fundamentals required to do the web development and mobile app development using SAP Fiori. So with that, let's look at the steps. What will be the different phases of this training? So this entire course is divided into 4 phases. We'll start in the phase 1 with the fundamentals of UI5, which includes the open frameworks like HTML5, CSS, JavaScript, and jQuery. We'll set up the development tool, including Business Application Studio and SAP Web IDE. We will look at different options for you to get started with the training. And then we'll start with UI5 core framework. So we'll talk about the UI5 SDK and also the framework and its libraries, including the standard way of developing applications using MVC architecture. In the phase 3 of this training, we will cover SAP Fiori UX development using SAP mobile library, including the latest concepts like component.js, router, route match handler, manifest JSON, scaffolding templates, and a lot of other options. Finally, we will build OData services in SAP Gateway system. Whether you are on embedded scenario or central hub, you'll be able to develop end-to-end OData services to expose your ERP data. Finally, you can consume this data in your Fiori applications and develop an end-to-end application for your business. Then we will learn how to deploy this application to the Launchpad and give access to the end user for your Fiori applications. Now, let's go ahead and look at the agenda for today's session. So we'll start creating a simple Fiori application in the system using Business Application Studio in SAP Cloud Platform. So our phase 1 will be setting up our development environment, which is Business Application Studio. Then we will commence our project. We will understand how the workspace can be created in the Business Application Studio to get started with the development. And then we will develop our very first user interface using a very simple UI control like a button and an image control. And then basically we will test our application finally in the browser. So this is what we will be looking at in our today's demo session. Just a brief overview for all of you. This entire training is designed for freshers who have no clue. You are absolute beginner with UI5. You can learn it without any know-how in the past of JavaScript or anything. One important thing to note that we will not cover this training in a way of copy paste So most of the trainers you would have seen on internet, they copy paste the code, they show you the output, and then they say bye bye. So that's not my style of training. We will cover everything step by step in the system without any copy paste of code. So we'll be writing every single line in front of you so that you can understand the meaning of every single artifact, including the meaning of the lines what we are putting in the system. So let's get started. So now we will first quickly look at the introduction for SAP UI5. What is SAP UI5? And then of course, I'm going to take you into the system for a live demo. So SAP UI5 is a framework which is used to develop responsive web applications to run on any platform, any browser, and any operating system. Yes. So very interesting word here called framework and responsive. So what is the meaning of framework and what is the meaning of responsive? So let's talk about responsive. A responsive web application is an application which can adapt itself according to the different devices. Yes. So this way you will always make sure that you write one line of code or one piece of code and that runs on all the different devices. You don't perhaps have to write different code for mobile and different code for a desktop. It's one single code which works for everything. And then we have the word framework. The word framework is a very popular word. We use it very often. It nothing but it's a collection of libraries. Then what is a library? So a library is a collection of classes. And what's a class? A class is a collection of methods, attributes, events. Yes, that's what how a class looks like. So you would really have a pretty big built-in framework which is developed already by SAP. It's very, very powerful. You don't have to reinvent the wheel. So this big framework includes so many libraries like this. So each of them is a library. Now, some of the common libraries are like SAP.m is a library, like so-called mobile library. SAP UI table is a library. SAP UI unified. So like this, we have different libraries. Each of the library contains classes. So you will have so many classes inside each of the library. And there is a very nice and good documentation available for these classes. Now, if I take maybe one of the class like SAP.m is the library and there's a class called button class. Now that class contains a lot of properties and attributes and functions. Like text is a property for the button class. Press is an event which gets fired whenever user clicks on the button. Icon is a property where you can give an icon for the button. Then you have type property. So likewise, we have so many properties and events and of course functions and methods like set text, get text, yeah, set icon, get icon. So like this you will have lots of methods. So all this documentation is also stored at one single place called SDK. We're going to talk about SDK in chapter number 3 in our training, but right now just understand that that's what how a framework or the UI5 framework is structured. Now, to be able to utilize this framework, we need to first load this framework. So the process of loading this framework in our application is called Bootstrap. So the very first thing when you start development of an application, so developing an app, you first need to have a development tool, of course. So the development tools which are used in industry is so-called BAS or Web IDE. BAS is a short form of Business Application Studio. And I will show you in our next class how to set up these development tools for yourself. So that's going to be step number one. In today's session, I'll show you how to get started with BAS. And then right after that, once you get started, you will first have to create a web file. Yeah. A web file is basically nothing but a HTML file with an extension .html. And this is the file where you will essentially going to write the code. But as you know that in any standard development, we modularize our code. So here also we're going to modularize, and to do this modularization, we use MVC framework. MVC stands for Model View Controller Framework. So it's basically inspired by engineering. So you have input, output, processing, and data. So model is your data, view is your input, output, and controller is your processing. So that is how you write the logic. If you would have worked in the past on BSP or WebDin Pros, then it's very similar approach to that. Okay, so that is what I'm going to do today. So I will be building a fresh UI5 page application, one pager application with one view and one controller. And the starting point of that is going to be an HTML file. So in this HTML file, we're going to first load the framework. And as I told you that this process is called Bootstrap. So what we do is we load this framework directly from the internet. And then we start creating our view and controller to basically display or build our modular components and build an application. And we follow also certain guidelines and structures, which is what we will also discuss throughout this training. So our goal is not just to become a developer, but also to become a developer whose code is, when reviewed, should not get bad comments. So basically, we will be following all the gold standards and best practices. Many times it so happens that we develop a code, output is coming, but it still doesn't give me a satisfaction of the quality of the work I've done. So here this training is going to help you in a sequential way to look at the perspectives of the code and also write a effective code which helps everyone. Yeah, so let's get started. The first thing is BAS. So I'll switch over to my browser, and here we go to cloudplatform.sap.com, and you can just register for a free trial over here. Now, once you register for a free trial, you're going to get a welcome email, and then you log into this trial from here. You will be directed to this kind of a page. Okay, so this is the cockpit or so-called home page for Cloud Platform trial account. A trial account can be created for 365 days. So you have a full whole year to use these tools which are available, and you can learn within that period of time. And of course, over the period of time, I will also show you different tools which you can also use to develop applications. So you will not be biased with one tool, but rather you will learn the techniques to utilize any tool. Because maybe today this is the tool, tomorrow something else is the tool. Essentially the coding practices remains the same. Yeah, so there is a tool called Business Application Studio, and it's right away available on the main cockpit page. You just got to click on it, and the moment you click on this, you're going to get to this screen. Okay, so I've already clicked, and now I've got this screen so called Business Application Studio. So this is our development environment to build a Fiori application. And what you need to do now is to create a new dev space here. So I say create a new dev space, and I'll say Anubhav is my dev space name, and I'll choose here SAP Fiori because my main goal is to build a Fiori application. And then I'm going to say please create a new dev space, and additionally you can also load extra bit of tools which you perhaps would need in your development. But right now I'm just kind of okay with the basic simple HTML5 or Fiori tools, which are standard. And I will say create a new dev space. So behind the scene, what's happening is it's creating a virtual machine for you on the internet. So basically, you as a developer is talking to a browser, and this browser is talking to an SAP Cloud Platform. Now, SAP Cloud Platform is a platform as a service which is then managing underlying servers. So there is a hardware beneath, yeah, there are a lot of hardware, RAM, computing units. So this cloud platform is basically abstraction on the hardware layer, and it is going to automatically create a compute unit on the internet, and this whole thing is on the cloud. Yeah, it's all on the internet. So behind the scene, it's going to allocate some computing resources for you, and it's going to run and make this up and running for you. And then it's going to prepare a development environment with necessary runtimes and tools so that you can connect directly from your browser to this tooling and develop an application. So basically, you are not having any computing resources utilized of your own computer. Rather, it's a computer which is somewhere on the cloud, and SAP behind the scene using an AWS infrastructure to actually keep this virtual machine up and running out there. So basically, just in a layman words, understand a computer running on the internet, and you are just connecting to that computer to do your development. And once you're done, you can just switch off that computer. So that is what is happening. Now I'll switch over back. You can see it started now a new virtual machine, and this is the ID of that virtual machine. So now I'll switch over to my virtual machine, and that's going to redirect me to my development tool, so-called Business Application Studio in the cloud. Nice. So it's too early to start with the template. I know many trainers start directly with templates. They just quickly run through some of the steps and show you the output, and they say you learned the Fiori. But that's not the right way. Perhaps at least I'm not so comfortable with that type of learning, because I truly believe that every single file has a meaning, every single line of code has a meaning, and that needs to be understood carefully before I get into any kind of project. So now what we're going to do is we're going to create a workspace. A workspace is nothing but on this computer there is a folder which I need to create, which is going to be called as a workspace. So workspace or a project folder is what we need to create. So I will go to terminal, and now I'm in the users directory, and I can just see all the directories here using ls command. So basically I'm connected to this remote computer, and I'm giving commands which are getting executed on that remote computer. So there's a folder called projects. So let me switch over to this project folders. And now in this, I'm going to create a new directory, mkdir, make a directory, and I will say Anubhav demo. Yeah, so I've created just now a directory, and that's my workspace. That's my space where I'm going to create a project. So now I can open workspace, and I will be able to see a Anubhav demo directory is created. Let me switch over and open that. And that's where exactly I can now get started with a project, with the files, and I can create different artifacts over here in this virtual machine. So now as part of our next step, we're going to create another folder here, and I'm going to call this as web app, because I wanted to organize my development properly in a correct folder structure. And inside this, I'm going to create a file called index.html. Remember, a web application, the starting point has to be an HTML file at the moment, and that's what we are giving. So let's start an HTML file here. So an HTML file is what a browser directly understands. So you can just say, welcome to Anubhav Trainings. And every HTML file consists of something called a header tag, which is the brain of HTML, and a body tag, which is what user will see. So I'll put that here. And I'm going to right click and say, I wanted to open a preview of this file. Nice. You can see this is like a very simple, straightforward web application running in your virtual environment. Nice. So now how do I turn this into a UI5 application? So for that, you need to bootstrap the UI5 framework. And for that, you have to go to the brain of HTML and put in a script tag here and just load the UI5 framework from the internet. And right now, I'm not going to explain you about how do I got this URL from, but in our unit number 11 is when we will talk about the bootstrap more in detail with the CDN concept. So for now, I'll just put in a URL from where I'm going to load my SAP UI5. Yes. And then we are going to give here all the address. So I will give data SAP UI theme. So I'm going to load also a beautiful theme, also called SAP Blue Crystal. So that's a classical Fiori theme which we are loading. Ideally, we should load the latest theme like Fiori 3, but for now I'm fine with this particular theme. At the same time, I now have to tell the UI5 Bootstrap that all my resources of this project exist in my current working directory, which is web app. So that's why we're going to give a one more property here called data SAP UI resource roots. And here I'm definitely going to mention that where is my project resources are. So my project resources are in my current working directory, which is /, and we're going to give a name to this current working directory, which is in this case the web app. So we're going to give it a simple namespace to that. So let me give a namespace to that. Maybe you can choose anything. So my favorite cartoon character is Jerry. So I'm going to give Jerry here. So Jerry is now representing my web app folder in my project. So that's called a namespace concept for our application directory. In a real world, typically we give a unique namespace, which kind of keeps my project very unique in real-time world. We'll discuss more about this in chapter 12. But for now, we are good. We are given an alias name to this web app project as Jerry, so that all the files which I'm going to point out, I'm going to point based on Jerry. So that was a very first thing I've got it added. And the next is I'm going to add now a view. So let me create a view object. So say var or view. Var is the keyword to create a variable, just like in ABAP, you use data keyword. We're using a var keyword here. And I'm going to create a new SAP UI view. And I'm going to give a couple of properties to the view. Like I want to give the view name. Where's my view is? So it's going to be in jerry.view.main. And the type of the view which I'm going to use right now is an XML view. Yeah, that is what I'll be using. Yeah. So now that's about calling a view. So remember, it's a model view controller architecture. So view is nothing but the input output. So next, I'm going to place this view which I've got it created into a body. So I say place at into the body. And of course, I'm going to go back and add a new div element in the body. So just say body. Yeah. For now, I'll just remove that element. So this is my very simple starting point of an application line by line. And I will also give here a special file or a special class property called SAP UI body to get my theming applied. So this theme which we are loading, it's gonna looking for an element with the class property called SAP UI body to get the background color of my entire application. So that's my very starting point. So in the first step, we loaded the Bootstrap. We just load the UI5 framework. Then we are using the library offered by UI5. This is a function in UI5 which I'm using to instantiate to create an object of a view. And then I'm going to place my view object in the body. But hey, where is my view object? I didn't create the view yet at the design time. So of course, when I do a preview of this now, it's not going to work. Yeah, it is definitely not going to work. So let me try a preview again. And what you see, it does not get me anything. So if you see, it is not getting me anything. However, if I press F12, I get a nice message. Okay, there is a message called unexpected token. So this is a message I'm getting. So like this, you get a message that first of all, the view is not there, you see, and also it is kind of not able to detect my SAP UI view function itself, which means even the UI5 framework did not load properly. That is perhaps because I think I've done a mistake here in terms of definition of resource roots. Just have to correct that quickly. Just give me, so it should be like single quote outside and double quote inside. Yeah, so that was a small mistake. So like this, we do a lot of mistakes during the training in the live videos, in the live trainings. so that you will get to know where have you gone wrong. Okay, let's try again. So I'm gonna right click and say preview. And now you see a light color blue screen, which indicates that at least my UI5 got loaded properly. That's why the background color have changed. But when you come back to F12, you will see it's not able to find the view. And there is no miracle about it because we didn't even create the view yet. Yeah, we are trying to load a view which doesn't exist. So Jerry is a folder, which is my web app, and there is to be a view folder, and that's where it should have a view called main view. So let's create one. I'm going to go back and create a new file with the view folder / main.view.xml. So don't be overwhelmed by this XML file or anything, but just understand that you are creating a screen. So now that's what I'm doing, and it's done in an XML view form. Yeah, that's how we do it. And now I can right click on this view and say open with layout editor. Okay, so a layout editor is nothing but a graphical modeler tool which is available to develop a view, but it's not able to load my graphical editor because even my basic syntax for the view is missing. So let me add a basic skeleton for the view syntax. So I'm going to come here and I'll say core view, or I say MVC view, and I'm going to define an MVC. What MVC means? It means a library. SAP UI Core MVC. That's a library name, and that's my view. Yeah. So now I'll save this. Let me try again opening this in a layout editor. And voila, this time you see I've got a layout editor open because my basic syntax for the view is ready. So now you can go back. It's pretty easy. You can just drag and drop. You can just maximize. You can drag and drop the controls and say I want to add a button. So I got a button and I can say click me. And when user click me on the button, what should happen? Maybe something should happen. Then maybe I can add an image control. And I can drag and drop an image control, for example. So we got an image here. Yeah, this image address is given here. So I'm just going to remove this. And I'm going to put in another image, which is here. I've got it from the internet. Yeah. And now maybe I can just put this image. So what I wanted to do initially, this image should be not visible to the user. So I will give an ID for this image control. There is every element have an element ID. So let me give an element ID called Spider-Man. Yeah. And what I want to do is when user clicks on the button, that's when I want this image to appear at front of user. So initially, let me make the visible property for this image as hidden. Yeah, so I make it visible false. So you see it's gone, it's disappeared, it's still there, but it's not visible. And the ID of that is Spider-Man. So now I'm going to click on the button and I'll say I wanted to implement a code for button click. Yeah. So now what I will do is I'm going to write the code, but look at that. When I go to events, it says the controller for this view is unreachable. Basically, all the processing logic has to be inside the controller as per the MVC principle. So I'm going to go back now and also define a controller name. And I will say it's going to be in my Jerry folder dot controller dot main. And I'm going to create a new controller in my web app directory again. So controller folder, and we are organizing everything nicely. And that's my controller file. And this is where we're going to write all the processing logic. So let me just define this controller. It's called SAP UI define is a syntax to define a controller. And now you see the business application studio tool is pretty equipped with generating the code for you. So I press enter and that's it. You see automatically it's generated the basic skeleton for my controller. So here I'm going to add a dependency from standard SAP UI5 controller class, which is called SAP UI Core MVC controller. And that's kind of a mandatory dependency to create a controller file. We're going to talk about this more in chapter lecture number 14 and 15. Why is it like this? And I'm going to return a controller object out. So let me give the name of my controller, jerry.controller.me. So that's a very simple controller definition I've created. And of course, I need to link my controller. I've already linked it here. You see, now I have a view in a controller. I switch over back to the layout editor. And this time when I select my button and okay, got to refresh kind of, just reopen, right click and reopen the layout editor. And now I click. Controller of this view is still not reachable. Okay, no problem. Let me just go and check why it's not reachable. So controller name, yeah, it's given, but I don't know why it's not reachable. But anyway, we can write now the code directly. So for this particular button, now I wanted to write a code. I wanted to attach an event, and that event name is called an event is called press events. So I'm going to go back and say press event. So whenever somebody press on this button, what should happen? So I say on press. That's my function, which is going to call when somebody press on this button. So I will go back now to this controller and I will write a press function. Yeah. And this is where what I will do is I will get the object of my image whose ID I've set as Spider-Man, and then I'm going to make it appear magically on the screen. So I'm going to come back and say, hey, go to my view. So go to my view, get view dot by ID, get me a control from the view whose ID is Spider-Man. Spider-Man is the ID of my my image, and then please make it visible again for me. Yes, and that's all gonna happen on click of my button. Nice. So it's time that we finally go back and test. So just a quick repeat of what I did. I've started with a simple HTML file. I bootstrap the UI5. I create a view object and I place that in the body of the DOM of the HTML. Then I've created a view skeleton, and then I've went to layout editor to create a button and an image, give a link for the image. It has auto generated the code, and then when you click on the button, it seek for a controller method. So we gave the method name, but we were missing controller. We created a controller also using the auto generation facility of BAS. Now, what is this define? What is this base class and all these concepts? We're going to cover chapter 15, 16, and 17. We have concepts of scaffolding and the base class and inheritance. All of these concepts we're going to cover more in detail. And then of course we are returning our controller object out, and then it has a function which gets called when the button is pressed. So on press, this function is going to get called. So nice, let's test it now. It's good we go back and test. So say preview, and you get just a button but not the image at the moment. So the moment I go and click, wow, there you go, nice. So got now this image displayed on click of the button. The final thing I want to test this in a browser. So I can right click and inspect, and I'm going to get the URL from here in the browser, and I can test it separately in a different browser directly. Nice. And what if people want to test it like in mobile? So I can press F12, switch to a device toolbar, and now I can test it like as if I'm testing it in iPhone. Whoa, that's really cool. And now I can just go back and kind of reload. So it's going to show me the application as if it's running in an iPhone, and I click on the button and I see it's also going to work in an iPhone. So the same application you are building, it's going to run on all the devices. You can also right away test this in different devices directly. So that was a very simple, brief overview. Maybe don't be overwhelmed right now with what you have seen. Maybe it's okay if you just got 10% of today's demo. It was just a demo session for you to get basic hand holding and understand the style of training, and also understand the basics. If you understood it fully, that's well and good. I think you are very much on track. So let's look at some of the frequently asked questions. So what will be the duration of this training and prerequisite? The total duration is 40 hours and there is no prerequisite for this training except basic programming skills. Yes. Now, the timing does not suit me. Can I go with the video mode training? Yes, you can opt with completely video mode training of our most recently completed batch and ask your questions over the email. This option applies for those who want to go fast track training or the timing is not suitable for them. Then what tool are we going to use and learn in this training? So I'm going to teach both the tools used in industry right now, BAS as well as WebID. Both I will cover in the training. So in our next class, we'll see how to set up the WebID tool also. And WebID Personal Edition is absolutely free. I will show you how to set that up in next class. What about the server access for OData? Yes, we will need the server access for last 10 to 12 classes. And I will guide you about server access and more in details. We have different server access plans and I will guide you about that. So don't worry, it's all going to be real time in the real system. So you will get hand holding whenever the time comes. Will you also cover real-time scenarios? Yes, we will cover end-to-end development process, including connection to SAP real data, and also develop and deploy this to the production system. So end-to-end life cycle of an application will be covered. I'm new to UI5. Can I learn? Yes, you are a college fresher. No problem. You can learn UI5 definitely. There is no need to know anything. I will cover everything, including HTML, CSS, JS, and jQuery. There is no need to know Java at all for this training. Java is not required. If I miss a class, how can I refer? So each class we will be recording and you can watch the recording of the class and then you can also catch up to the sessions on regular basis. The process for enrollment is very simple. You can just send us an email on contact@anubhavtrainings.com. The officially batch has started today. Tomorrow is our next class and I hope to see you soon in our next session. So with that, it's a wrap on today's demo session. I hope you enjoyed it as usual. Please subscribe the channel, hit the like button if you enjoyed this demo session and keep in touch, stay tuned. Thank you so much once again for watching this demo. Have a nice day and goodbye.